Dustforce is a 2D platformer developed by Hitbox Team released in 2012. You play as a nimble janitor equipped with a favourite cleaning apparatus and the mission to rid the world of dust. On the surface, it seems like a run-of-the-mill indie platformer with a novel concept, nice art style and music, but beneath the surface lies a game with surprising mechanical depth and an emphasis on player growth. This is reflected all throughout Dustforce's design, from its scoring system and progression, to the movement and combat mechanics, and to level design. So let's take a look at scoring and progression. Dustforce consists of many separate levels connected by an overworld, and like most platformers, the objective of each level is to reach the end. Levels are organised into tiers of difficulty and are unlocked by earning keys from completing levels of the previous tier, which gives a natural sense of progression as you unlock harder levels. Upon finishing a level, the game scores a player's performance on two scales: completion, which is the percentage of dust the player swept up, and finesse, which is how well the player kept up their combo, which resets upon taking damage or timing out. To get the coveted SS rank, players must sweep up all the dust without dropping their combo. While this isn't very difficult in earlier levels, it soon becomes a formidable challenge. Ultimately, this is what the game pushes players towards, not just the ability to beat a level, but to master it. The game ties unlocking levels directly to performance. The better rank achieved in a level, the more progress is made towards earning a key, with an SS rank earning a full key. This incentivizes players to improve their ranks. They're given a gentle introduction to levels, with generous checkpoints and unlimited retries, but will soon need to achieve higher ranks to unlock more levels. Since this system uses keys instead of unlocking levels linearly, there's always a set of levels to work on. Progress is never blocked by a single level. Key progress is also shared between levels of the same tier, meaning keys can still be earned without getting an S rank. For example, earning an average of a C rank and an A rank will also earn a full key. Level progression in Dustforce is fairly open-ended in this way, allowing players to choose levels they want to improve in, but still funneling them into mastering all the levels to eventually earn all the keys. But it doesn't stop there. Your best run of a level is automatically submitted to the online leaderboard, ordered by both rank and time. The replay of every run is also available to watch, where you may learn a new technique or two, or just stare in awe at the sheer skill of some players. This fosters a competitive yet collaborative environment where players fight against each other for a higher rank, but also learn from one another and improve collectively. Dustforce can only gain from a system like this. Speedrunning isn't a requirement, but provides another incentive for those who are looking for one. It's the main reason I came back to the game after beating the main levels years ago, improving my skill to a level I wouldn't have bothered to achieve otherwise. Having multiple scoring systems and open-ended progression makes for a low entry point, but incentivizes players to push themselves towards mastery. Whether it's getting that SS rank, beating your friends on the leaderboard, or climbing that bit higher on the ladder, there's always more to accomplish. It's within this constant push for improvement that players engage more heavily in Dustforce's intricate mechanics. In technical games like this, gameplay peaks when players have the full set of mechanics at their disposal and the capability to use them. It's critical to have adequate incentives to encourage players to reach this state, and Dustforce manages to deliver with its progression and scoring systems. But what makes Dustforce's gameplay worth mastering? Well, it's a versatile system of movement and combat that has more than enough mechanical depth to supplement a lack of unlockable abilities or items. There is an immense sense of progression and satisfaction by learning these skills and chaining them together to make amazing runs. Not to mention the sense of speed. A major contributor to this is how heavily momentum influences player movement. Even a small change in timing or the way players manipulate momentum can have a large consequence on a run, meaning there's always room for improvement. Take sliding for example. Speed and momentum is gained by sliding down a slope, pretty standard. However, additional momentum can be gained if the player has vertical speed by falling onto the slope. This momentum will carry over if the player dashes right at the bottom of the slope, and further retain this momentum by dashing successively at just the right time. Something as simple as sliding is now much more nuanced and takes planning, skill and timing to fully utilize, and even if you don't care about how fast your run is, it's still pretty damn satisfying. This is all done without changing the core mechanic of sliding, which players can still do if they haven't learnt the more advanced interactions. These kinds of interactions between movement and momentum appear in many places in Dustforce, and serve to increase the skill ceiling and to make what would be trivial parts of a level to something that can always be improved upon. A drawback to using momentum this heavily is that it's quite uncommon amongst platformers and players will need some time to adjust. For example, trying to land on a small platform in a game without momentum is simple. Just stop moving horizontally when the character is directly above the platform. However, in Dustforce, momentum will carry over and the character will overshoot. The player needs to move in the opposite direction to counteract momentum. Exactly how much this is will take some time to get a feel for. This results in somewhat of a difficulty spike when players begin the game. There are many other subtle movement techniques that don't heavily involve momentum. The more basic ones are explained in the tutorial and are the only mechanics required to complete levels. For example, dashing right before a jump skips running acceleration, allowing the player to maneuver on tight platforms. Many other techniques are found through experimentation, by accident, or watching other players' replays, like how dashing downward can be used to speed up your descent without requiring an air charge, or that you can corner boost by pressing jump right as you climb on the inside of a corner to climb further. These remain as extra techniques that are fun to discover in their own right and add an extra tool to the player's repertoire. Dustforce also contains fairly simplistic melee combat. The player has a light and heavy attack which can also be directed upward or downward, and a special meter that fills up as dust is being cleaned. Unleashing it will clear all enemies and dust in a large area. Instead of having a deep combat system, Dustforce focuses on versatility and how combat can be used in conjunction with movement. For some examples, attacks can be used to sweep up dust from a distance, saving the trouble of having to run or slide over it. Heavy attacks can even sweep dust on the opposite side of a tile, saving even more time. Momentum is retained in aerial combat, unlike on the ground, and is a great way to dispatch enemies without breaking the character's flow. Defeating an enemy with a heavy attack will splatter dust in the direction of the attack. Players need to be careful of nearby tiles and the direction of their attacks to avoid making a bigger mess than they began with, which would only slow them down. This can even be done strategically so that there's extra dust to fill up the special meter. The special attack is particularly versatile. It can be used to get out of trouble since it resets the player's double jump, or skip a difficult room that you just don't want to deal with, or with some careful planning and efficient usage, greatly speed up a run. All these subtle techniques, both in movement and combat, offer a ton of depth without obscuring the base mechanics, and work in tandem to provide gameplay that's satisfying and fun to learn. Mastering these versatile techniques isn't necessary to complete most levels, but are instead optional tools which can be chained together in creative ways to elevate runs to a new level. There's joy to be had in discovering these mechanics, and although players will miss some of these, there are guides explaining all of these in great details for those extra keen players. The level design in Dustforce does an excellent job in providing a foundation for the gameplay to flourish on, particularly in the way levels continue to be engaging even after completing them. On the first run, players will likely follow a trail of dust which usually forms a straightforward route to the end. However, due to the open-endedness of most levels and careful placement of obstacles and platforms, many small variations and alternate strategies exist, which players may find easier to execute or cut down time on their runs. The more linear stages also typically have long stretches of platforms which can be traversed without breaking forward momentum, allowing for extremely fluid and fast runs for those who are familiar with the movement mechanics. The result is a set of well-designed levels which take into consideration the varied level of skill and knowledge the player may have, which provides room for improvement and challenges not only those who are completing the level for the first time, but those who are coming back for the 20th. Even the easiest levels in Dustforce have vast room for improvement. You're watching what is the first level for most players, Downhill. This is a run by a beginner who just got their first S rank, and this is the fastest run at the current time. Levels rarely feel like they're holding the player back, and instead players are only limited by their own skill. They provide the training grounds for players to improve, facilitating the constant push for player growth that the game's progression system aims for. As a result, replaying levels in Dustforce remains engaging and rewarding where it's often a chore in many of its contemporaries. Another great aspect of the level design is that levels often focus on a particular mechanic which compels players to improve in those particular skills. For example, the arena-style combat levels, where enemies are both varied and numerous, force players to be comfortable in fighting the different enemy types without getting hit. Or the level construction site, which focuses on efficiently cleaning all different sides of a tile. These levels help players learn and master valuable gameplay mechanics which they might not have had the opportunity to do so otherwise. These skills are also transferable, as many of these types of obstacles reappear in other levels in one form or another, especially the temple levels, which are a culmination of all these obstacles, putting the player's skills to the ultimate test. And there's plenty of other aspects of the game I haven't even touched on, like the variation the 4 playable characters provide, the clean, stylized art and fluid animations, how well the relaxing soundtrack complements the often difficult gameplay, the little Easter eggs found in secret areas in many of the levels, the local multiplayer mode, the powerful level editor, the endless community-made maps which are visually unique and surprisingly well designed. Dustforce has all of these things, which is part of what makes it such an excellent game. However, at its core, the game is about player growth. On the surface, the game's movement and combat is simple and understandable, while hiding an enormous set of subtle and versatile mechanics which have massive amounts of potential waiting to be realized by a player. The game's level design accommodates for players new to the level while giving ample space for advanced players to use advanced techniques, and the scoring system and progression structure provide a variety of incentives to push players towards mastering the gameplay and the levels. Hitbox set out to make a game that would have an insanely high skill ceiling to see how far players would push themselves, and I think it was a resounding success. Dustforce remains an approachable game despite its initial difficulty spike, but its true beauty is revealed to players who put in time to master one of the most technical, mechanically rich, and rewarding platformers I've ever played, and is a game I cannot recommend enough.